Looking back, I think the message itself mattered less than how short it was. You're cut from the house. We don't trust you anymore. That was all my mother sent. No phone call, no explanation. Just a gray text bubble arriving at 8:14 on a Tuesday morning while I was standing in line for coffee. I remember reading it twice, mostly because of the wording. The house, not the estate, not the property. The house, as if they were removing me from architecture and family at the same time. I typed several responses while waiting for my order. None of them sounded like me. Eventually, I erased everything and sent back. Makes sense. The barista called my name immediately afterward. For a few hours, I convinced myself the situation would cool down naturally like most family conflicts do. Somebody would overreact, somebody would apologize halfway, and everyone would pretend the original wound had been smaller than it really was. But around noon, I opened my laptop and began reviewing documents instead. That part probably says something unpleasant about me. Years earlier, after my stepfather's health declined, I had slowly become the person who handled practical things nobody else wanted to understand. Property tax coordination, insurance renewals, vendor contracts during renovations, distribution scheduling tied to a small family trust. None of it felt powerful at the time, mostly tedious. My mother used to call me the organized one whenever she needed signatures or transfers processed quickly. My younger brother preferred staying out of financial discussions completely unless money was already missing. Over time, I stopped correcting people when they referred to the work as family stuff, even though most of it rested entirely on my accounts, my authorizations, or my professional contacts. That was the mistake. Competence becomes invisible very quickly inside families. 6 months before the text message, I had personally advanced $24,000 into a renovation cycle after contractor delays threatened refinancing timelines on the house. Temporary money, everyone said. Purely procedural. No repayment date was ever formalized because we were still speaking to each other like relatives back then. The deeper issue was something else. I held discretionary grant authority connected to the trust structure. Limited authority, but enough to approve interim distributions and bridge timing gaps during active projects. Nobody in my family really understood how much coordination Hunza depended on that role because I never discussed it dramatically. Things functioning smoothly rarely look important from the outside. After reading my mother's message that morning, I terminated the authority, professionally, quietly. Then I submitted formal recall documentation for the unsecured advance, not aggressively. The paperwork itself was almost cold in tone. By evening, I felt sick about it, not guilty exactly. More uncertain. There's a thin line between establishing boundaries and waiting too long to establish them until they finally emerge looking punitive. I wasn't completely sure which side of that line I stood on anymore. 2 days later, their financial advisor emailed me subject line: "Major issue, please call immediately." I read the email during lunch and locked my phone again without responding. An hour later, another arrived. Shorter this time. We've encountered a serious liquidity problem tied to the suspended authorization structure. The language almost made me laugh because suddenly everyone was speaking in precise terms instead of emotional ones. No mention of trust, no mention of betrayal, just structures, obligations, exposure. By the weekend, contractor payments had frozen temporarily pending review. A refinancing window stalled because reserve requirements no longer aligned cleanly without the recalled advance. Nobody lost the house. That part matters. Real consequences are usually slower and less cinematic than people imagine. Mostly paperwork, tightening around assumptions nobody realized they were making. My brother called late Saturday night. "You really pulled everything?" I removed myself from it. That's basically the same thing. I almost argued, but didn't, because from his perspective, maybe it was. A week later, there was an emergency meeting with attorneys, the financial advisor, and 2 trust administrators. I attended remotely from my apartment while eating reheated pasta out of a bowl balanced beside my keyboard. My mother looked older than I remembered, not broken, just tired in a way that made me suddenly aware we had all spent years converting emotional problems into administrative ones because paperwork felt easier to manage. The advisor spoke carefully the entire meeting. He explained that informal family expectations could not override documented authority structures. The recalled advance remained legally valid. Distribution approvals required replacement authorization before refinancing could continue. Nobody raised their voice. That was the strange part. The entire collapse of certainty happened calmly. Near the end of the meeting, my mother finally looked directly into the camera. "You could have just talked to us." I stared at her for a long moment. Then I said the thing I'd probably understood for years without admitting it aloud. "You stopped hearing me once I became useful." Silence followed that, not dramatic silence. The kind people sit inside when they realize the conversation actually ended much earlier than they thought. Months later, I drove past the house accidentally while visiting a client nearby. The renovations had resumed, new windows, fresh landscaping, life continuing like it usually does. I slowed at the intersection but never turned onto the street. What surprised me most was that being proven necessary didn't feel satisfying, just clarifying. And clarification, I learned, is sometimes colder than loss.